confident in this. I will see her. I will see her. When I think about the goodness of Jesus, I will remain and all that is done for me. My soul, my soul, my soul. We set our hope. We said you are. You are, you are. You are, you are. You are. We set our hope on you. On your love.
We invite you to stay close with us on today's lesson and the work that we has to do. You know, I've been a person that have encouraged marriage, always marriage, rather than just being together. I know many of you do not know that it's a sin. You do not know what misery it brings in your life. Sometimes you don't know why you can never find any joy. But I want you to know that if you permit Christ to work in your life fully and unprohibited, you can have the fullness of Christ's joy in your life. But when you're dealing with a lot of secret situations in life, it does not allow you to have the joy that God has provided for you. So that's why we encourage this, because I find fine men and women that I talk with sometimes, they say, well, we are together. And oftentimes I say, are you married? They say, no, but we are together. And it's dangerous because somebody need to make a commitment. Amen? So beautiful. Well, today we're going to the 51st Psalms. And out of that Psalms, we're going to talk about a man named David. Not David, minister of music, not that David. His name is David, but he's another David. Amen. David was a man that was after God's own heart. He was a very valuable person in the way of the kingship for God. He had a good heart. He understood God. He trusted God. But he ran into some difficulties. You understand? And how he got into the difficulties, we want to talk about that today. So the 51st Psalms, and I want you to notice with me verse 4 and 7. Psalms 51, 5:1, and verses 4 and 7. And what we want you to notice there is that this man, David, had committed an awful atrocity, a devastating sin. And when I tell you about it, you may say, but this thing ripped him inside out. The 4th verse says, against thee, this is his confession, thee only have I sinned. I didn't do it to no one else. I did it to you, God. I want you to underline that. And then the 7th verse, after he'd gone through some other conversation, he turned to God and said, purge me with hyssop. You know, regardless of how far you've gone, hyssop will straighten it out. Amen. Now, let's begin to look at this. And I lift up David very highly, because of his confession and a plea for restoration. That's our thought. Confession and a plea for restoration. Does not matter if you confess it, God will forgive you and you can be restored. Isn't that marvelous? I want everybody to know that. You know, after the confession, you got to confess it. You must confess it, whatever it is. And after you confess it, he will restore you. Now, he committed the sixth commandment. He violated it. And the seventh commandment. The sixth and seventh. He messed up. One behind the other one. And God restored him. The fifth commandment said that we are to honor our mother and our father. Am I right? The sixth commandment says, thou shalt not kill. The seventh commandment says, thou shalt not commit adultery. So he got in number 6 and number 7, and they tore his life up. David was a man that was, I do not know his age, but he was married, he was king, and he was doing well. Everybody respected him. Just being in his presence, he just filled the field or filled the room wherever he was. He just had that kind of presence. And in the spring of the year, the troops would always, go to war. And the king should go up and take a look at the troops to see how they look, how they're faring. But instead of him going out looking at the troops, he decided to stay home and cool it. Have him a little sip of wine, perhaps. Ate some little morsels of bread with some little dips. And about 8 or 9, 10 o'clock, he decided to go out and walk around on his back piazza. And he looked over the roof of another building, and he saw a lovely woman bathing in the moonlight. His flesh took over. And he came back in, perspiration was running off him, and he asked, who was that woman? He said, that's the Hittite's wife, Uriah. He said, bring over. Came over, had an affair with her. She became pregnant. When everybody sit up and hear this, a one-night stand. She got pregnant, and she got all cuted up and went on back to her apartment. Her husband was way up there fighting somewhere in the mountains, way away from home. No one knew it. Nobody knew that there was anything going on. And if the men who went and got her knew, they weren't going to tell. It was really between David and God and Bathsheba. And Bathsheba wasn't telling. So what happened was that a few months after that, she sent word, didn't say anything about her frequent there before, and said to the king she had conceived. So right away, David said, I know what, send word up and have Uriah to come home, her husband, on furlough. But he was a dedicated captain or whatever he was, his rank was. And he said, okay, came home, but he wouldn't go into his wife. He slept in the tents with the troops, the guards. So David asked him, said, why didn't you go in? He said, how could I go and my troops is up there fighting? No, I couldn't do that. So David scratched his head. He said, I got to find a way to get this guy into his wife. She's pregnant. It's tearing him up. Sin is an awful thing. It don't stop. It just keep working. And I don't care how you try to discourage it, it don't stop. So his mind went to work now and says, all right, you won't go into her? I'm going to fix a meal for you. Come and have dinner with the king tomorrow evening. So he came and sat down, and he got him good and intoxicated. Now's the time, he figured. Told him, take him down and usher him in the bedroom and put him in the bed. It didn't work. He came back out and slept on the outside. David said, what's the matter with you? You come home and you don't even go into bed with your wife? And he says, how can I do it? I can't. I love the troops. I'm concerned. And he refused to go in. David then mind leaped to commandment number 6. And he wrote a letter, sealed it up, and gave to Uriah to take his own execution letter and deliver it to the general. And he took the letter, and on the letter it was written, take Uriah and put him in the hottest battle, that he might be killed. And he delivered the letter. He was so honest, so trustworthy, he didn't even open the letter, carrying his own letter of execution, and delivered it. They put him in the battle, and the word came back. As the word came back down to David, the word was, let him know that the troops are fine, the battle went well, we lost a few men, but the Hittite was killed. Make sure you tell him that. David had Bathsheba's husband killed. Nobody knew it. It was between God and himself. And I don't know whether Bathsheba knew it or not. She probably thought it just died in battle. But David mind the king. The king himself succumbed to such low, treacherous acts. You can be ever so great and so lifted up, but sin keep working. It'll keep bringing you down to its lowest common denominator. And this is what happened. So then, this was resting on his mind, but he wasn't doing anything about it. It was well conceived, but Nathan got a word from the Lord. And he told Nathan to go and speak to David. And he gave him a story to give to David. And he told him about a man who was a wealthy man. And the man was throwing a party for a friend that came by. What a story. And he said, this friend went out and took another man's little personal lamb, a little lamb that the man loved. He curdled it. It slept with him. He bottle fed it. He kept with him wherever he went. He loved the lamb. But the man slaughtered the lamb and put it on the table for his friend. When the story was finished with David, David jumped up and said, whoever that is, he must die. Nathan, the priest, turned to him and said, David, thou art the man. It is you. And when this happened, David ran, and that's when he wrote this 51st Psalms. Have mercy upon me, God. He was prone, he was crying, he was torn apart on the inside. Oh God, according to thy loving kindness, according to thy multitude of thy tender mercies, blot out my transgressions. He was torn up. Wash me thoroughly from mine iniquities and cleanse me from my sins. For I acknowledge my transgressions, and my sin is ever before me. When I sleep, it's there, and I get up, it's there. I go out and acting king, it's still there. For I acknowledge my transgressions, but they're there. Against thee and thee only have I sinned and done this evil in thy sight, that thou mightest be justified when thou speakest, and be clear when thou judgest. Behold, I was shapen in iniquity, and in sin did my mother conceive me. Behold, I desired truth, and with the inward parts, and in the hidden parts thou shalt make me to know wisdom. And then he turned and he remembered hyssop. Hyssop is what you put over the door. And he says, purge me with hyssop, and I shall be cleansed. When the blood was put over the door of the Israelites when they was in Egypt, they used hyssop to do it. It's a little bush, and they spread it across. And when the death angel came, they passed over. So that's why he went to the word hyssop. And I shall be clean. Wash me, and I shall be whiter than snow. Hyssop, hyssop. We need hyssop on our hearts. That's what's wrong. Well, there are so many people that go through sin and they hang out and they never come to know the Lord. They never get back in. They're forever out on the perimeter. But God wants us to confess. David was a person of confession. 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 Personally, he did not relegate it over to nobody. It was his own doings. And this is how we have to come to confess. We cannot come confessing, talking about someone else caused me to sin. It was Bathsheba who was out there, and she should not have been there. You're a king. You're a man after God's own heart. You have to have enough spiritual integrity that you don't go into that. How many times have we gone wrong and we have accused someone else, another person? If it had not been for them, I would not have gotten into this. But David said, and I loved him, he says, it was me and me alone. I have sinned, and I've done this evil in thy sight. And I want you to know, Lord, that I'm not trying to be big, but I've sinned, I've done wrong. And what happened is, whenever you confess, the mercies of God start to work. Immediately, restoration starts. The rebuilding starts. Listen how far he had gone. He had gotten so far until he talks about, in the 8th verse, he said, make me to hear joy and gladness, that the bones which thou hast broken may rejoice. You see, when you lose the joy of the Lord, it's like broken bones. It's hurt, it's protruding out. You have no use of yourself. You're broken down, and folk wonder what is wrong. Sin breaks you down. Secret sin tear you apart. So I offer you Jesus. He is the great restorer. He is the cornerstone. He's the one that knows how to rebuild us. Regardless of how long the sin been there, it can be removed, and he will rebuild us again. Listen, confession and a plea for restoration. Lord, I sinned. I was wrong. Restore me again. Bring me back. Bring me back. Sometimes we just lose our direction. We just lose it. The flesh just overwhelms us. Has it ever happened to you? Did you ever look back and say, what in the world was I thinking about? What was there? What was going on? But thank God for the restoration. See, as soon as your mind go there and you acknowledge that you're wrong, then ask the Lord, Lord, forgive me. restore me, bring me back. Anybody know what I'm talking about? Have you been there? I want to say to the young people, you at the prime time of having a good, cheerful, and a life full of joy. But you can lose it all if you start to do secret sins. There are just some of the things that, sneaking, doing a little drugs, a little wine, smoking cigarettes, hung up in the corners, getting carried away with some girls that your parents have said to leave alone. Some boys getting caught up with girls your parents say, leave alone. When they speak very clear, hear them. We all been there. There's always been somebody that parents said, leave alone. So the fifth commandment rolls over into the sixth commandment, and the sixth commandment rolls over into the seventh commandment. You get hooked up in the wrong way, and your life get messed up. You'll wind up like David. You'll be trying to figure how to get rid of something so you can have some freedom. Some of you may not want to own it, but the devil will put anything in your heart. The devil is a manipulator. He's a deceiver. And he'll say, oh, you didn't think that. But meantime, he's making it possible because he put the first thought in your mind, and he will not stop until you make it a reality. Do you hear what I'm saying? The devil ever just give you a little thought of something and snatch it back? And you say, wow, where'd that come from? And then the devil, next time you see it, it's almost full grown. You say, there it is. It's working out. Huh? That's why banks are robbed, neighborhood stores are stuck up. That's why that we have drugs all through our streets, because it went from just a thought to a reality. It's there, and it does not have to be there. I offer you Jesus. I offer you Jesus to restore you. I'm going to get ready to close now because we have a wedding that we want to follow right after the message. But I want to open the doors of the church, because there may be somebody here who want to break ranks with life, that's been so mean and so conniving and so deceptive. Somebody need to turn back to God. Somebody perhaps need to go home and after asking God to forgive them, they probably need to go home and say to their wife, or say to their husband, or say to their children. Children perhaps need to go home and say to their parents, I'm sorry. God will work it out and work it through for you. The doors of the church is open. You may come by letter candidate for baptism. Through fellowship or be restored in the church. But I invite you to come. Give me your hand and guard your heart. Today, start allowing your heart to be restored. This journey, you need Jesus. You need him in your life. You should not try to make it without him. God bless you. God bless you. God bless you.